What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, and thanks for joining us for the news this evening. Japan's former economic security minister is on a 3-day visit to Taipei, meeting with Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te and multiple high-level officials. Taiwan-Japan ties on regional security and their trading partnership are on the main agenda. Irene Lin reports from the Foreign Ministry.
Japan's former economic security minister Kobayashi Takayuki is in Taiwan for a 3-day visit. President Lai Ching-te welcomed him at the presidential office in Taipei. It's their first meeting in 7 years, and a potential free trade deal is on the agenda. Kobayashi, who's now an MP in the Japanese parliament, spoke here at the Foreign Ministry. He says Japan and Taiwan have a strong bond and that he looks forward to more collaboration in the future.
Lai stated that he has high expectations for Japan's leadership for peace, prosperity and stability in the Indo-Pacific region, and I take this matter very seriously.
During his meeting with Kobayashi, President Lai thanked Japan for its continued dedication to maintain cross-strait stability and support for Taiwan. He said an economic partnership agreement with Japan would benefit both countries.
台日是共享自由、民主、人权等价值的民主伙伴，相信只要我们携手合作，一定能够因应威权主义的挑战，为印太区域带来繁荣发展。
As China solidifies its dominance in the domestic tech manufacturing in what some countries call the red supply chain, economies that once relied on China are now working to secure their own place in the global market. But with tensions growing in the Taiwan Strait and the geopolitical situation uncertain, the clock is ticking for Taiwan to strengthen tech and economic ties with friendly nations and enhance its strategic position. On Wednesday, Kobayashi met with Legislative Speaker Han Kuo-yu and Defense Minister Wellington Koo. Both officials praised Taiwan and Japan's mutual assistance in the wake of natural disasters. Kobayashi is set to meet with Taiwan's Vice President Bi King-hsiao and Economy Minister Guo Zhihui. Regional security and economic stability are expected to be key topics of discussion during those meetings. Klein Wang and Irene Lin at the Foreign Ministry in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
President Lai has attended the joint graduation ceremony for Taiwan's 8 military academies. He called on the new military officers to remain disciplined and to serve the people. Lai pledged to push forward defense reforms and achieve military self-reliance, encouraging the officers to take the lead in safeguarding national security. He also vowed to unite the Taiwanese people so they could give their full backing to the military.
身为三军统帅，我的使命就是确保国家的生存发展。 保护全体国人的生命财产安全。
President Lai also reminded the new officers to stay vigilant in the face of ongoing authoritarian threats. David Lee, a former foreign minister and secretary general to President Tsai Ing-wen, has released a new memoir. In it, he describes the decision-making process behind the 2022 Taiwan visit of then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
蔡总统最后。 他是以一个国家元首的角度做了这样的一个裁示，那当时我也在场，我也没有表示别的意思，其他我看到的2位也没有表示别的意思，所以说最后决定就是欢迎这个议长。
At the launch of Lee's book, Tsai and another former foreign minister, Frederick Chen, also praised Lee's low-key pragmatism as the steady force Taiwan needs to safeguard its national interests. Nearly all members of the NATO alliance have agreed to increase their defense spending. This marks a major foreign policy win for U.S. President Donald Trump, who has long demanded that countries increase their defense budgets, not just NATO partners, but also Taiwan. Chris Gorn reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump is back in Washington following a successful NATO summit at The Hague, where members almost unanimously agreed to raise their defense spending requirements from 2% to 5% of GDP over the next decade.
And the decisions today will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and America's allies.
It's a major achievement for an administration that has called for partner countries around the world, including Taiwan, to increase defense spending rather than relying on U.S. capabilities.
NATO members are pledging to spend 5% of their GDP on defense, even Germany. So it doesn't make sense for countries in Europe to do that while key allies in Asia spend less on defense in the face of an even more formidable threat.
I have a different assessment with respect, Senator, about Taiwan's efforts. I think actually as a proportion of GDP, it's well below 3%. I agree with President Trump that they should be more like 10%, or at least something in that ballpark.
Taiwan has already said it will increase its defense spending to 3% of GDP. And some experts say NATO's decision could pave the way for Taiwan to go even higher.
That certainly sets the bar for Taiwan. And I think to work with the Trump administration and their demands and their expectations, I think a roadmap like this is going to be very helpful.
But this year's summit focused mostly on the recent conflict between Iran and Israel and the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. NATO leaders met with and reaffirmed support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And despite previous tensions, Zelensky and Trump met on the sidelines of the summit. Trump later leaving open the possibility of further U.S. military assistance for Ukraine.
They do want to have the anti-missile missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots, and we're going to see if we can make some available.
With global tensions high, NATO's new spending target signals a shifting balance in who foots the now much bigger bill for global security. John Su and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding, with U.S. President Trump promising more talks next week. But the war and Iran's threats to blockade the vital Strait of Hormuz has raised questions over global energy security. For more on the situation, Alec McDonald spoke to Fidel Amachi Owusu, a security analyst and CEO of DefSec Analytics Africa.
What sort of implications are there for the globe if the Strait of Hormuz were shut now or at a later date?
I would like to see that the region in question, that is the Persian Gulf, is a very strategic region for international reasons. That is, about 20% of global oil is supplied from the area. Saudi Arabia has so much oil, but much of its reserves or much of the drilling happens at that region, the coast, the Persian Gulf coast. And then other countries like Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, all have their oil resources being moved in that corridor. So if it is closed, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, it goes to affect global market prices. And therefore, when there is any closure or there's any disruption in the region, it goes to affect global oil prices. And countries, both developed and developing, will be affected by that.
For a country like Taiwan, where there is not a significant amount of oil and natural gas going through the Strait of Hormuz, but it would certainly still have an impact, what sort of considerations might leaders be going through right now?
So these countries will then have to face some challenges because, trying to change your sources of supply is not that easy. It takes time. After years of saber rattling between Israel and Iran, this is the first time we've seen actual exchanges. In the past months and a couple of years, we've seen, especially after the October attack in Israel, we've seen Israel or Tehran and Israel exchanging missiles. But this is the first time there has been an actual war, the 12-day war, so-called, and it has not led to the closure of the strait. However, in the future, it could. And so many of these countries that rely on energy resources from these straits are going to look for alternatives in the future. And I think they are going to look at new areas like in Africa and other places where new oil finds are being made and developments are following.
So considering the geopolitical situation that Taiwan is in, with Beijing having a lot of influence in Africa right now, do you think Taiwan might have difficulties finding alternative energy and oil field sources in Africa?
I believe that sometimes the global politics is separated from the markets. In that if a country wants to sell its oil, it might not look at how Beijing sees a country before it sells its oil to that country. When it comes to diplomacy, it's a different ballgame. But when it comes to the market, that can could also be different. And so I think that no matter what, Taiwan will definitely get an alternative in the markets. And after all, countries such as the United States and others still recognize Taiwan at some levels. And I believe that could also make up for any gaps that could be created as a result of these tensions in the Persian Gulf.
That was Fidel Amachi-Owusu from DefSec Analytics Africa. Australia is the top destination for Taiwanese youth for a working holiday. And in 2025, the number of people making the trip is set to be back on par with pre-COVID levels. Lauren Patmore looks at why thousands of people are heading down under and how they come back changed.
Alan Gian is heading to work in his Australia-themed cafe in Taipei, inspired by the 3 years he spent on a working holiday there. His experience in Australia opened up doors to continue exchanges and make connections.
像现在，像开店以后，还蛮多外国人来的，你其实就可以跟他们对话。那可能去澳洲之前，我这些 conversation 我可能完全没办法。
In just over 10 years, more than 110,000 Taiwanese have made the trip to Australia under this program, which allows them to live, travel and take short-term jobs while exploring the country. One of these people is Mike Shi.
Because I was a police officer in Taiwan, so I will say I don't like the environment, so I quit.
He arrived in November 2023. Working in designer clothing after 7 years in the police force in Taipei. He says he picked Australia because of its reputation of being simple to obtain a visa, the higher pay on offer, and the country's popularity among Taiwanese. He's extended his one-year visa to add another year and wants to travel elsewhere afterward.
I think my learning is just, if you want to do something, just go for it. And if you don't try, you never know.
For Ray Lai from Jiayi in southern Taiwan and now living in Taipei, the hardest part of her 2 years away was coming home. Back in 2019, she remembers life there feeling easier and being less stressed.
So it's kind of felt like if you're willing to work hard and then you will get a certain amount of money that can provide you with like a lifestyle that you want.
Ray mainly worked in a meat factory in the rural town of Gundagai, population 1,700, but also explored the country's landscapes, ticking off major cities. Her time overseas made her see things differently.
Your job doesn't represent you as a person, but I think that's something that I slowly learned after I was like in Australia and until now. And I think that is a very valuable experience that is kind of hard for people maybe never leave Taiwan to understand.
But the working holiday isn't always a dream. Mike and Ray did shifts on blueberry farms briefly where the pay was low and work laborious. In recent years, unions in Australia have called for a government inquiry into underpayment and poor working conditions on these farms. Last year, Taiwan's representative office in Brisbane also warned of rising scams targeting young Taiwanese in the country. One tourist went temporarily missing after one scam. Despite these challenges, Australia remains a popular destination for working holiday makers. Experts have been speaking to me, saying returnees act as informal ambassadors, bringing back language skills and cultural insights. The people-to-people ties are deepened, creating a soft power between the two countries. It's a vision Alan shares.
之后的话，可能觉得可能会再办，像前阵子有办一些澳洲的讲座活动，对，那我觉得主要就是以澳洲为主嘛，所以之后的话可能也会继续办活动啊。
From making coffee to working in factories, the working holiday experience gave Mike, Ray and Alan more than just a paycheck. It brought new perspectives. Despite hardships, for many Taiwanese, Australia is a place for more opportunities to see the world and make meaningful connections. Chris Ma, Jeffrey Chen and Lauren Patmore for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks again for tuning in for What's Up Taiwan. Finally, check out how 46-year-old Filipino boxing icon Manny Pacquiao is preparing for his comeback fight in LA. I'm Eric Gao. Take care, and we'll see you next time.